because she has been a great advocate to get rid of drunk drivers off our streets and reduce the crime in Nassau County. Give her another round of applause. Kathleen, I'm glad to have you once again, and Nostrand Civic Association. As you can see from the smiles on their faces, they're happy also.
Thank you very much. I know that there's a whole line of people who are. Adam Haber is here. He's going to be speaking. We've got Paul Dell, Reverend Elliott. You're waiting for Jim Garner. A lot of people. So no wonder there's a lot of people in this room. So I don't want to talk for very long because I want to give you guys an opportunity to ask any questions that you have. But I've been here, I think I come here on average, for you, my good friend, every, 18 months or so. I love coming here. You're a very active organization. You always have great questions. You have an incredible community. And if there's one thing that I've tried to do as DA, is to do initiatives that always include the community. The days of like law enforcement coming into communities and saying, this is what we're doing, take it or leave it, are over. The initiative that we did in the village of Hempstead was successful because we went out and we partnered with everyone in the community. They told me they were sick and tired of the way things were, and we tried something completely different. And it has been sustainable because everyone in the community bought into it. So every initiative they do, every educational program, I partner with schools to do our Choices and Consequences program. I'm sure a lot of you have sat through it, or your kids have sat through it. It teaches the kids about the dangers of drinking and driving. It's still an epidemic. As much as I've been banging the drum about DWI, it's still an epidemic across this country. We had a really great law passed 2 years ago called Leandra's Law. You'll remember there was a woman driving, I think, on the West Side Highway. Remember, and she had like 7 kids in the car, and she was driving like a lunatic, drunk. And Leandra Rosado was thrown from the car and was killed. She was the only child of Lenny Rosado, and he went on this campaign to change the law, and he single-handedly did it. Well, the Daily News was really on the legislature's back as well, because what he wanted to do was say, look, when you put a child in a car and you're drunk, that child is a hostage. They have nothing, they have no power, no ability to take the keys away from you, to call 911, they don't have cell phones, right? So we have to protect them and show that how much we want to protect them and how vulnerable they are by having our laws say that. So we passed Leandra's Law. Now when you drive drunk with a kid in the car, it's a felony. But the most important part of that law was the requirement that if you are convicted of DWI for the first time, it's a mandatory ignition interlock in your car. What's an ignition interlock? It's that thing that you have to blow into. It's attached to your car. The defendant has to pay for it to be put into his or her car, and you have to blow into it. And if it detects any alcohol, the car won't start. So there are ways, technological ways, that we can keep the worst of the worst drunk drivers off the road. But what I did after a year of Leandra's Law going into effect was to see how many people were actually abiding by the law and getting the ignition interlock. And what I found was a lot of defendants went before the judge and said, I don't have a car, or I sold my car. P.S. they sold it to their brother, their boyfriend, their girlfriend, their sister, and were continuing to drive. So they thought that they could wait out the 6-month period that they had to have the ignition interlock, and they just keep driving and no one would know the difference. Well, so what we did was we waited at, well, I won't tell you where we were, but we waited and we knew where a lot of the worst probationers that were supposed to have the ignition interlocks were going at a certain time, and we caught them driving. And they were rearrested. And what that showed us is there are a number of loopholes built into Leandra's Law, as happens very often. Even the gun bill that the governor just got passed in historically quick time has some problems that they have to fix. But you never let perfection stand in the way of trying to achieve, forward mobility, right? So you do the best that you can, and once you see how a law is implemented, you find the loopholes, and you go back to Albany like I'm going to do this year, and I'm going to get all those loopholes fixed. I don't know how many of you were paying attention to the SAT thing. One of the other things that I try to do is take cases and pay attention to issues that a lot of DAs don't do. So when Walmart, one of the employees of Walmart was trampled to death, and the police said, sorry, there's no crime here, I said, this is absurd. There's someone dead who was literally standing at the door when this sea of people pushed the doors down on top of him and then walked over the doors, trampling him to death. It was awful. all full debt. And I'm sure Walmart paid in whatever civil suit that they have, but I wanted to make sure that big box stores like them, like the Best Buys, like all these stores that say, come in, we're gonna give you all these great deals, and we're not gonna take care about your security whatsoever, because we just wanna get you in the store and we wanna sell our products. There is a social responsibility, an ethical and moral responsibility that these stores have to make sure that their customers and their employees are safe. So what we did was we got, at the time Walmart only had 92 only. They had 92 stores in the state of New York. I got them to agree, even though it was just Nassau County where this happened, I got them to agree all across New York State to implement a safety procedure where every store was given a different level of risk, and they had to put security procedures in place. For 4 years we monitored them, and we never had a fatal incident after that. And P.S., they implemented that safety procedure all across the country. So that's the kind of stuff that we get involved in. The SAT scandal, when you had these rich kids up in North Hempstead, in Great Neck North High School, paying other kids to take the test for them. Whether they felt like they were going to do poorly and they wanted to get into a better school than they deserved to be in, whether they were just lazy and didn't feel like studying like all of us had to. Either way, they were breaking the law. Because if I explain to you that you have person A paying person B to impersonate person A, and thousands of dollars was exchanged, and documents were signed off on that they knew were false, you would say that must be a crime. The fact that this happened with high school kids doesn't make it not a crime. And if we can't teach 17 and 18-year-old kids that cheating doesn't pay, shame on us, okay? So the school wanted a little slap on the wrist and said, they're all getting charged, let the court system figure it out, they're all gonna get YOs anyway because of their age and by operation of law, but we're gonna try and hold them accountable. And we're gonna change the system. So the two administrators of these, the SATs and the ACTs, completely overhauled their security procedures in terms of how they process kids when they're applying online or through the mail to take the test, and when they show up at the location to actually on the test day. And look, are we ever gonna, is it possible that 1 or 2 cases might get through? Maybe, but it's gonna be a hell of a lot harder. Because now they have to jump through all these hoops, they have to provide a picture. The picture that's provided goes back to the high school, so the guidance counselor can say, yes, that kid who showed up is the kid he says he is, and she says she is. And this, of course, was done all across the country. The reason why this case was important to me was because what you had was a system where there was no level playing field, okay? You had kids who were cheating, who were taking spots in colleges away from kids who played by the rules. And that is wrong. So if you want to see the future Bernie Madoffs, the future corporate criminal, the future corrupt public official, look at these kids. These are the kind of things that these kids are doing when they're that young, and they get away with it. They learn that cheating pays. Well, not here, and not across the country anymore when it comes to the SATs and the ACTs. So these are the kind of things that I try to do. I try to take a more broad approach and not just say, oh, well, you know, throw my hands up, you know what, can't charge the corporation, sorry. We have to change the system. When you see a wrong, you have to right it. And that's what I've tried to do. We are doing a lot in the area of internet crime. I mean, it is a huge, huge problem. As great as technology is, we are trying to stay one step ahead of the criminals. And it's difficult because the internet is wonderful, but there are a myriad of different ways they can rip you off. So part of our educational program is also going out to senior groups to teach seniors who are part of the vulnerable population, as well as younger kids, right, and the disabled, and animals, by the way. I started an animal crime unit. I'll talk about that in a minute. Very, very important. But we need to arm, what I try to do is arm every single population, whether it's young, old, rich, poor, black, white, I don't care, it doesn't matter, with the knowledge and the information that they need to keep yourselves safe. And also, if God forbid you become a victim, to have the criminal justice system be there for you to protect you. So there's no SPCA in Nassau County. No place for anyone to make an anonymous phone call to complain about animal abuse. So I set up a hotline 2.5 years ago, and we got thousands of calls. We've made the first dogfighting cases in this county. No one ever makes dogfighting cases. Why is it important that we have an animal crimes unit here, the only one of its kind, in the state, in this DA's office? Because animals deserve to be protected. They are truly the voiceless, right? They don't, I mean, they can bark, but you don't, what is it, you go to the bathroom, you need food, I mean, you don't know what, they're barking and that's it. They cannot communicate. They are truly, truly vulnerable. But what we also know is that when you see instances of animal abuse, very often what follows is the discovery of gang activity. We just found 18 pit bulls. Oh my God, this sad. Did you read about it? Was the most, two of them were in the ring, they had to be euthanized. One, they wired his jaw shut and then put him in the ring so he couldn't fight back. It's awful what they do to these poor animals. Most of them are going to be able to be rescued and adopted, but 3 of them had to be euthanized. Awful, awful. So, very often when you hear about complaints like this, you see a lot of gang activity, or you see instances of domestic violence or child abuse. Anyone who can be cruel to an animal, the next step is cruelty to another human being. That's why this Bureau is so important. I'm incredibly proud of it as well. So, we're doing a lot of things. Public corruption, very difficult to prove, okay, because a lot of this corruption is so systemic in the system, and unless people are really willing to change it, it's never going to change. We've got a case going on right now with a deputy police commissioner, a former deputy police commissioner, who basically said, you know what, with me as deputy police commissioner, there's going to be 2 systems of justice. One for those who are rich and connected, and one for those who are not. Not here in Nassau County, okay? Not under my watch as DA. So I can't say any more about that case because it's on trial right now. My hope is that a jury finds that the evidence is sufficient to return a guilty verdict for that case. Very, very important. So, I mean, there's so many other things. I mean, I can keep talking, but I know there's other people who want to talk. Do you have any questions? Anyway, yeah.